Have you ever been playing a solo and you're playing a lot of notes, but it just doesn't sound quite right? You might need to work on your guide tones. Well, what are guide tones? I'm using them a lot in my Jazz Improv Institute warm-up, and what I'm finding is that a lot of people are now asking me questions like, what is this and what is the context? And not only that, but why should we do this? So, this video is to explain everything you need to know about guide tones. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and hit the notifications bell to find out whenever we post a new video. Guide tones are the thirds and the sevenths of the chord. In this case, I'm playing a B flat chord with the third and the seventh, and that's called a shell voicing. So if you're a piano player and you're trying to figure out how to play the slash marks, number one, don't play the root. And number two, level one is like just the guide tones, the thirds and the sevenths. So I actually have that written out. If you're interested, that might be helpful for you to be able to know how to comp or what to play for a B flat blues. Just look up Sunny Moon for 2 guide tones, and I believe the Sunny Moon for 2 guide tones are on my blog. So when you're playing these thirds and sevenths, it's not really clear as to how to come up with this. So let's go over that first. So in the B flat blues, we have a B flat chord followed by an E flat 7. We're going to start with guide tones on the third and seventh in the B flat chord. You could either start on the third or the seventh. The third would be D and the seventh would be A flat. And then what you're going to do is when the chord changes, you're going to go to the nearest third or seventh of the next chord. In this case, you go down a half step. And it just so happens that when there is the movement of a fourth, in other words, from a B flat to an E flat is an interval of a fourth, you go down a half step. Now, if you're going to do, for example, measure 10 of the blues in the jazz idiom, it has what's called a minor 2-5. Let's give that as an example. So I'm going to do a C minor chord. And in that case, B flat and E flat are the guide tones, okay? So if I was playing E flat, then the next chord is an F7. In that case, the closest note is also an E flat. So when you're going from a minor chord to a dominant 7, and it's the movement of a fourth, then there are going to be notes that are the same between the two. So then the only difference is the B flat that goes to the A, or the third of the F7. Jazz musicians start to recognize these. They're called shell voicings or guide tones or color tones very quickly. And then they're like the guardrails of improvisation. So let's say you're improvising. You want to make sure instead of playing a natural 7, that would clash with the dominant 7. So you would play mostly dominant 7. Now you could do the bebop scale and then use the natural 7 as a passing tone. But generally speaking, when we're performing, we really want to know what the thirds are and the sevenths. The seventh isn't going to sound right unless you play the correct one. And as far as the thirds, that's the difference between major and minor. So if you play the wrong third, if you play a B flat, then it becomes a blues note. And it's not necessarily wrong, you just got to pivot away into the major third. So you got to know what you're doing in order to play with intent. You could play the wrong thirds and sevenths, and it wouldn't be terrible. And that brings me to my philosophy, which is that there are no mistakes in jazz, just pivots. So it's not necessarily wrong to play the wrong note. What is the art of the improvisation is how to get out of it, how to resolve it, how to move away from that. And in that case, then, for example, if you were playing a minor third over a major chord, then you would just go up a half step to resolve it. Or you could keep it the same on purpose, perhaps as part of a scale or some sort of alteration. So doing that indicates okay, what are the thirds and sevenths? When I'm doing the guide tones as a warm-up, those guide tones are training your ear. I'm actually trying to basically kill two birds with one stone. One is warming up with your air, your ear, and your time, and your tone, and taking out a tuner and watching the tuner while you play to make sure you have good time and good tone. Those are just fundamentals, and you always want to do some sort of warm-up. But the other part is that I'm warming up your ear to hear those chord progressions. We start out with the blues, but then I have another example of learning the guide tones to confirmation. You should just learn it. Even if you don't know the song confirmation, that chord progression is prevalent across a lot of different tunes, and it will train your ear to hear the thirds and sevenths of a similar chord progression. So those are guide tones. You can start on either the third or the seventh. Go to the next nearest third or seventh. I've written them out for you so you can start learning them from reading the sheet music for it. And it's a great way to internalize the quality of the chord and the functionality of the chord as you are learning to improvise over a standard. I hope that's helpful. As always, please like and subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. And if you want to know more or if you want some feedback, please feel free to join the Jazz Improv Institute community and keep practicing. Have a great day.